The fireworks were supposed to be the main event. Across Alaska, families gathered for 4th of July celebrations in 2025, the air thick with barbecue and laughter. But as the festivities peaked, an unthinkable announcement shattered the mood. Canada had closed the Alaska Highway. At first, many dismissed it as a hoax. The highway was Alaska's lifeline, a symbol of unity, not division. But the news was real. Social media and TV lit up with confusion and outrage. Families on road trips were turned away. Truck drivers with essential goods were stranded. Alaskans who'd crossed into the Yukon couldn't get home. The Canadian government's statement was brief, citing sovereign and environmental concerns. It did nothing to calm the panic. The closure felt like a betrayal. The holiday's spirit of unity turned bitterly ironic. The Alaska Highway isn't just a road, it's the backbone of Alaska's economy, carrying food, medical supplies, and tourists. The closure was more than an inconvenience. It was a direct threat to the well-being of nearly 750,000 Americans. As the reality set in, a single question echoed from Alaska to Washington: what just happened, and what comes next? The continent held its breath, waiting for a response. The fireworks still lit up the sky, but now they seemed to mock the day's celebration. The shock quickly turned to outrage. How could a relationship between two close allies break down so suddenly? The closure was a blockade, not a bureaucratic decision. The sense of isolation was immediate and chilling. The world watched as the longest undefended border became a line of confrontation. The festive atmosphere evaporated, replaced by uncertainty. The Alaska Highway, once a symbol of partnership, was now a flashpoint. The question remained: how would America respond? The Alaska Highway was born in crisis, built during World War II to defend North America after Pearl Harbor. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers carved a path through 1,500 miles of wilderness, connecting Alaska to the lower 48 in just 8 months. Over 26,000 workers battled frozen ground, forests, and rivers to complete the road. It was a feat of engineering and international cooperation, a testament to the U.S.-Canada alliance. After the war, the highway became Alaska's main artery, carrying families, tourists, and vital goods. It's more than pavement. It's a symbol of shared values and economic integration. For Alaskans, it's essential: how they get groceries, mail, and medical supplies. Closing it is like cutting off a state from its own country. The 2025 closure struck at the heart of this historic relationship. A road built for defense in war had become a source of conflict in peace. The symbolism was as powerful as the practical impact. The closure wasn't just a logistical crisis, it was a rupture in trust. The highway's history made the current pain even sharper. Generations had relied on this link. Now, it was broken. The sense of betrayal ran deep. The closure forced both nations to confront the fragility of their partnership. The world wondered, could this vital connection ever be restored? The answer was far from clear. The closure was swift and stunning. On July 4, 2025, Canadian border officers erected barriers at the Beaver Creek crossing and other points along the highway. Steel gates locked, concrete barricades set, no warning, no prior announcement. Travelers were met with a simple sign: border closed by order of the Government of Canada. No entry or exit permitted. The U.S. Embassy received official notice just an hour before the shutdown. Canada cited broad disputes over Arctic environmental regulations and sovereignty claims. To American officials, it was clear: this was political pressure, not routine policy. The timing, on America's national holiday, sent a pointed message. Eyewitnesses described chaos. Families in RVs were stranded, truckers with perishable goods left helpless. "I've never seen this," said a veteran driver. "My truck is full of fresh produce for Fairbanks, it's all going to rot." The blockade extended beyond the highway. Private flights were grounded, naval patrols increased in disputed waters. The border was comprehensively sealed. The Canadian government had weaponized Alaska's isolation. The world watched in disbelief as a peaceful border became a flashpoint. The closure was a calculated move for maximum leverage. The human impact was immediate and raw. The message: Canada was serious, and the U.S. would have to respond. The longest undefended border was now a line of confrontation. The crisis had begun, not with a shot, but with a locked gate. The peaceful relationship was fractured overnight. The stakes had never been higher. Prime Minister Trudeau addressed the world, framing the closure as a defense of Canadian interests, not aggression. "Our concerns about the Arctic and our sovereign territory have been ignored for too long," he declared. Canada's official statement listed grievances: U.S. refusal to ratify a caribou migration treaty, disputes over the Northwest Passage, and resource exploration without consultation. This closure is a direct result of that lack of cooperation. We are simply enforcing our own laws on our own land. Canadian officials used the language of sovereignty, insisting the measure was temporary and meant to force negotiations. This is not a blockade. It's regulatory enforcement, said the Minister of Public Safety. The government hoped to blunt accusations of hostility by framing the move as legal and justified, but the decision was deeply controversial even within Canada. Opposition leaders called it reckless. Business leaders feared economic fallout and U.S. retaliation. Trudeau's government had taken a massive risk, betting that a shock would force talks. But no one could predict how Washington would react. The world waited for America's next move. President Trump's response was immediate and explosive. News of the closure reached him at Mar-a-Lago during 4th of July celebrations. He took to social media. "Disgraceful. Little Justin Trudeau thinks he can push the USA around. This will not stand." In a press conference, Trump called the closure an attack on American citizens and an insult to our country. "We're not paying. In fact, they're going to pay. All options are on the table." The State Department issued a formal protest calling the closure a violation of long-standing agreements. The U.S. ambassador to Canada was recalled for urgent consultations. Congress erupted in bipartisan outrage, demanding immediate action. Behind the scenes, the administration considered tariffs on Canadian exports and slowdowns at other border crossings. Some even suggested restricting Canadian access to U.S. airspace. The message was clear: if Canada wanted to fight, the U.S. was ready. The stage was set for dangerous escalation. The world watched as two allies teetered on the brink of a trade war. The diplomatic crisis deepened by the hour. The stakes for both nations had never been higher. The diplomatic standoff had immediate, devastating effects on ordinary people. Thousands of travelers were stranded. Americans trapped in the Yukon, Canadians stuck in Alaska. Ferries and flights were overwhelmed, prices soared. Small towns along the highway like Beaver Creek and Northway saw their economies collapse overnight. "Our business is down 95%, said a motel owner. "The highway is our lifeblood." Alaskans faced empty shelves and soaring prices for food and medicine. The sense of isolation became frighteningly real. Friendships and families that spanned the border were suddenly cut off. The closure frayed the personal and cultural ties that had bound the region together. The human cost was measured in anxiety, lost livelihoods, and broken connections. The crisis was no longer abstract. It was painfully real. The closure's economic shockwaves rippled far beyond Alaska. The state's industries, retail, construction, services faced immediate shortages and rising costs. Construction projects halted, inflation soared, and the economy teetered. Canadian businesses suffered too, especially in the Yukon and British Columbia. The threat of U.S. retaliation sent Canadian markets tumbling. The crisis exposed the fragility of North American supply chains. Just-in-time delivery models collapsed. Industries from auto to agriculture braced for disaster. The closure shattered the illusion of a stable, predictable border. Companies reconsidered their strategies, wary of future disruptions. The economic cost was measured not just in lost sales, but in eroded trust. The business climate had changed overnight. The damage would take years to repair. Analysts called it the worst U.S.-Canada crisis since the War of 1812. Years of Canadian frustration over Arctic issues had boiled over. Experts warned of a devastating trade war and a possible recession on both sides. Financial markets panicked. Investment and capital flight loomed. Security analysts worried about the impact on NORAD and continental defense. "Our adversaries are watching with delight," warned a retired U.S. general. The Arctic's strategic importance made unity more vital than ever. Yet, both leaders had painted themselves into corners. Neither could back down. Some called for a third-party mediator to de-escalate the crisis. The path to a diplomatic solution was narrow and fraught. Without compromise, the crisis could reshape North America for the worse. The world watched, hoping for statesmanship over brinkmanship. The future of the continent hung in the balance. The Alaska Highway closure marked a turning point in North American history. A symbolic line became a hard barrier, exposing hidden fractures in the U.S.-Canada relationship. Decades of goodwill were undone in days. The crisis forced both nations to confront uncomfortable truths about their partnership. As of July 20th, the highway remained closed, rhetoric heated, and costs mounting. The path forward demanded true statesmanship, leaders willing to look beyond short-term wins. Citizens in both countries had to demand dialogue, not ultimatums. The future of North America depended on rebuilding trust. Would this be the moment the friendship broke? or the crisis that forced it to be rebuilt stronger? The answer was still unwritten.